Sup nerds, I'm Wes.
I'm Tom.
Today we're taking a look at Spring Meadow by Stronghold Games. Before we get into this review, I do want to say that we haven't played Cottage Garden or Indian Summer yet, and I know that a lot of people are looking for a comparison to those two games, and you're not going to find that here.
After we do play those games, we'll totally, maybe, I don't know. No promises.
But this game was brought to you by the same designers. It's the third in that series. They also did the game Patchwork. So these types of games are something, it's like their forte. It's what they like to do. They being you, Rosenberg.
Yeah, I mean, every time I see that name, I'm like, well, that's something I'm never going to try to say. Spring Meadow is a game where, and I feel like a broken record saying this again, but it's one of those many games where Tom, a couple years ago, would have walked right past it.
Yeah.
And I would even say Tom, a couple weeks ago, would walk right past it. So, like, I've said before on this channel that tile-laying games are not my favorite. I used to dislike them, and then I went from disliking them to just, they're fine, but they're probably, the type of game that I would choose last. You know what I mean? They're low on the totem pole of my favorite. But then whenever I saw these Tetrisy, and I know they have a name for them, Pentome something, whenever I'd see those kind of pieces, I would think, like, the way my brain thinks about placing those, it's so much harder. Like, I can play, like, between two cities because I just have to think about where in this square should I put this square, Like, it kind of makes a lot of sense. But there's so many options because this is such a weird shape, and it can be oriented anyway and then flipped and oriented anyway, and it didn't seem like it would be my type of game. But
we're so surprised at how much we like this game. I'm right there with you, where I saw these games and I was like, meh. Like, I've heard a lot of people rave about them, and I'm like, I'm sure they're amazing for those people, but, like, that's nothing we're going to play. But when Steven asked us to check this game out, we were like, okay, like, fine, I'll check it out. It'll be a good excuse to try them out. And I was, like, blown away right into the game. And I feel like that's how we respond to a lot of these games where we say, like, maybe not, but, like, this was so much fun, and it is very much like board game Tetris because you're just trying to get the pieces to line up, but you draft them. It's not like in Jetpack Joyride where it's just like a mad dash to see who can grab what piece. It's very like methodical drafting, and if you really want to get into it, you can look and say, okay, I'm going to get this piece, and then in the next turn, I'm going to be able to get one of these, and in this turn, as long as he doesn't take that one, I could get the. So, like, you can get into a little bit of that. It's not blind drafting where you're just, like, passing the hand around, but there is definitely some bit of, like, I hope he doesn't take this piece because I want it next turn, especially when you're coming around the corners or something. But there's not really any hate drafting. And then on top of Tetris, it also adds kind of two different things with the little dots in the middle. If you haven't played the game, if you can line, so some of these tiles have the little circles in them. If you can line up adjacent circles, either in a straight line or they can like zigzag as long as they're touching each other orthogonally, then you get a bonus of getting a rock to place in addition. The more you line up, the more options of rocks you have to choose from. They can help you kind of fill in those gaps in your row because you only score the farthest complete row. So if you have like your first row filled, your second row is missing one, and then your next 10 rows filled, those top 10 rows are worth nothing. You only score up until that break.
there was even a time when I was considering placing two tiles, like kind of like up and off and to the left, that I knew wouldn't score, so that I could, just so I could line up two holes, so that I could get a single rock to drop like down here, and I'd get these next two rows. Like,
yeah,
it'd
be
worth it.
You have to do that.
Yeah, well, I'm like, it'd almost be worth it to waste two turns getting what could have been a decent amount of points, whatever, maybe 5 or 6 or 7 points, to get 20. I would do that, assuming that I have screwed myself over like that. And I think that's the issue that I had initially looking at it with all the weird shapes. And in this game, you're actually kind of incentivized to get the bigger the piece, the better, if you can pull it off. I'm always afraid that like I'm going to screw myself over by creating little gaps. And you kind of do that. The whole thing with getting the rocks does kind of mitigate that a little bit, but it is just a completely different way of thinking with all these shapes being so vastly different.
The other thing that they add to it is the gophers. So you have like every board has the little holes already on it, and if you're able to line the holes in the tiles up with the holes on the board, then those are also worth a bonus point. But if you have to cover one of those holes up, like if you don't place the dot on it, if it's just a solid part of your tile, you have to cover up one of the holes later. So it's not really like you could get a bonus point, but you're choosing not to, but you're not getting that point and you're losing a point. So it's almost like a swing of 2 points every time you cover a hole up. So that does just add a little bit more strategy. Like 2 points doesn't sound like that much. In a 2-player game, our scores were pretty much, every once in a while we get where like I have 50 and you're like, I have 86. But like for the most part, it was like I have 89, you have 86.
The scoring in this game is pretty tight, which is good because, and I feel like a lot of these tiles don't vary that much in the number of squares that are on them, with the exception of like this one that I'm holding, which is just 2, but it has 2 holes in it, so it's instant. It is by itself an instant get a 1 rock, you know. So even then that's 3. So I feel like they do a good job of putting a lot of balance in there, even given the fact that you can screw yourself over. But you screw yourself over because of just poor decisions you make, not anything, you know, inherent in the design of the game.
It is good that there's multiple scoring rounds in the game because you could have one where like you just like in Tetris, you just need like the straight 4. Like just a straight 4 down and I'll score these 4 rows. So maybe like this round I only have like 30 points and you have 50. But if next round I'm able to get that one piece I need, I'll shoot 20 ahead of you. And because you don't actually write down your score, it's not like, well, now I'm 20 points behind him. You just, whoever wins the round gets one of these little pins, and then you keep going. So it's not like I'm trying to catch 20 points up. It's as long as I can close that gap, it's not forever there.
Jetpack Joyride was the first type of game that we've played with these type of pieces. So I really think it was that game that made me kind of go, well, I guess these things aren't that hard to maneuver, aren't that, you know, like it kind of broke the ice for me for playing this type of game. So I think if I hadn't played Jetpack Joyride, I wouldn't have been able to, you know, wrap my head around this. Because again, still thinking about like all these potential holes you could make and issues you could have, you know, it is a game that would seem on the surface like it might be kind of difficult. So like you know, I'm thinking about with the, will it pass the Tom's Mom test? I don't know, because you can screw yourself over with the way that the Tetris-y things work, and it can be pretty devastating to realize that, you know, I've built up all this stuff, but this one hole down here is screwing me over from getting all these extra points. So I wouldn't necessarily say this game is that difficult, but I wouldn't call it an intro game either.
Yeah, I can see how it might be hard for some people to wrap their heads around. I think that if they're like good at puzzles, they might like it. For me, it wasn't necessarily like the connecting the shapes that was an issue. I grew up playing Tetris because we didn't have internet at my house when I was a kid. For me, it was really just like the theme, and it's kind of going back to our prejudice against Euro games, that like for a while I was like, ooh, that's Euro, I don't want to play it. Like, give me my dice and my minis and my dragons and theme. And like this, I'm like, okay, so you've got these like grass flower tiles and you're placing them on a snowboard. Like, that's all.
Yeah, I mean, if this was like laying bricks to seal up the dragon's tomb, I mean, for real, that makes, like, look at this. Look at this box. Nothing about this screams manly or nerdy. Well, kind of nerdy, but like, you know, it took me a lot to like get over, like, oh, so there's like, dude, there's an apple on the cover.
So it was definitely more thematics and a little bit of like, I had never played a game with this kind of thing, but I just assumed that like, oh, you're just laying these shaped tiles down and that's the game. Cool. Have fun with that, guys. I'm going to go play something fun. But again, it's one of those things where every time I play a game like this that like has this much of like an impact on how I look at these kinds of games, it's really exciting to be like, oh man, what else are we missing out on? Like, this world of board gaming is so diverse, and I feel like we close ourselves off from things sometimes, and then we're like, no, this is amazing. I want to go look up more games by these guys and more games in this kind of a genre and be like, do I really like all of this? And I thought I didn't the whole time?
So I think in this video, we're both reviewing this game and doing kind of an introspection here, talking about, but he is completely right that I would look at this game and other games like it and completely walk away. So that means I do want to play the other two games in this line, but I'll play Patchwork, I'll play A Feast for Odin, I'll play Barren Park.
Yeah.
I think if there's more that I can't remember, but
let us know. Put them in the comments.
Put them in the comments.
What game should we play?
But I seriously, like, I straight up looked at Barren Park or A Feast for Odin and went, and never investigated more. You know? Like, that's so my fault. Like, I can't blame I can blame society.
So if you guys can't tell, we really had a good time with Spring Meadow. I know we talked more about our, like, stance in the board gaming community than we maybe did about this game, but I hope you can see that, like, this game is good enough that it made us have those kind of thoughts. And so we can't recommend it enough.
The one last thing I will say about this is I'm actually surprised at how the drafting aspect worked here, because, again, the fact that there's very little hate drafting, but it's mostly about triggering the end of the round is what you're trying to worry about. So the draft is a little bit unique and different from other drafts that I've seen before. And it's almost something you don't really think about. It just kind of sneaks up on you the very first time we sat down to play it, because obviously I wasn't thinking about it. I was like, oh, wait, crap. I think I just shafted myself because I'm putting these tiny ones down, trying to slow go, and then, boom, next turn, the round is over. Oh no, like it's something that, if you're not looking for it, you won't see it. You know what I mean?
Yeah, you can say, like, okay, in 5 turns, it's definitely going to be end of round. I could make it so that this is his last turn, but that would give him the +2 points, and am I ready for that to happen yet?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so it's a very different style of drafting. But I will say I did really, really like this. Maybe slightly less than Wes did, just because it is still a game that, it probably won't pass the Tom's Mom test. That is something I think about, that, it's probably going to end up hitting the table ever so slightly less because I'm going to have to make sure I'm playing it with decently versed gamers. When a game can be an intro game and a deep game, that's really good. This one, I'm not 100% certain I'd be able to put an intro game stamp on it. But that's pretty much the only negative that I have that we didn't already talk about in terms of the theme and everything.
The only other slight complaint I'll have about it, and this probably isn't really an issue, but, like, storing this, like, we don't have an insert for it right now. It only came with 2 baggies, but that's kind of irrelevant. We have tons of baggies. But, like, organizing these tiles is just kind of like a crapshoot of, like, you're supposed to randomly place them on the board. So, like, it works decently just to, like, grab from the pile and just, like, put those out there. But it's almost just a little, like, awkward and clunky.
It's a good thing you gave them a visual example of you grabbing tiles and placing them out on the board.
They wouldn't have known otherwise.
Well, thank God it happened.
So, again, that's nothing against the gameplay. More of just, like, it's annoying that it exists, but, like,
I would recommend a drawstring bag. You could store all of them in there, throw it in here, and then when you go to play, you just take the bag out and use it. It's functional, and then put them back in. Boom.
You're done.
Done.
So we're going to have a purchase link in the description box down below. I definitely recommend you check this game out.
And while you guys are down there, I definitely recommend that you subscribe to our channel so you'll never be bored.
Today we're clearing away from the snow. Clearing away the snow from our... Yeah, that was better this time.
Today we're melting the snow so some gophers can poop. Wes had brought up Jetpack Joyride earlier, which uses these same Tetris style pieces. There's a word for it that I could Google on my phone right now, but I'm not going to do it. Don't come on, man. It's like Penta something.
Tetramino is a polyamino made of 4 square balls.
I think it's that.
Polyamino.
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 Okay. Let's never use that word.